Okay everybody, it is time to talk about the Final Fantasy XVI demo that actually dropped out today on PlayStation Store, and it should be available worldwide. I believe the file size was either 16.8 gigabytes or 18 gigabytes, somewhere in that ballpark. And I have to be completely honest with you and say I was positively surprised by the quality of this demo. The game runs really well. There was no frame drop issues. I mean, in the beginning of the demo, you have the ability to choose whatever the game will prefer on the frame rate or in the graphics, and I was basically choosing the frame rate one, and it was really fluid experience from start to finish. No problems there. The game looked really good. A lot better than it did on those live streams where it tended to look a bit more messy and etc. But it's always a bit different experience when you get to actually play it on your own screen. So I have to say, in terms of the visual execution and how the game feels, the fluidity of it, of the combat and everything, very good. Okay, I have nothing to really complain about that. But let's talk about probably the thing that people are most interested about, which is the combat, because that's basically what this game is truly about, and I will address that statement a bit later on in this video. But the combat, well, first of all, the button scheme was something that I needed to get adjusted a bit more, because the controls were not really familiar to any of the existing ARPGs that I have played, whatever it's like Dark Souls or something else. So there was a bit of a adjustment period there, and even throughout this demo, which is around 2 hours long, I have to say I still didn't fully grasp it. I didn't die at any point in the game though, or face any difficulties. So I do actually feel, in case you have been watching those other videos, the developers talk about the aspect of being able to equip these rings, which will make your gameplay experience a lot more easier. And I went through without all of the rings, and it was very easy. So there's a couple of things. And this is something I said on the previous video when I did reaction to the trailers and everything, is that when you are doing an action RPG combat, they're a lot more harder to balance than your turn-based combat systems, and it really goes into several different factions. But in 15, for example, there was so many ways to basically abuse the warp jumping and keep spamming it in a way without taking no damage. And in here you don't have exactly something as broken and similar as in 15, but you did have things like you're able to basically spam fire as much as you want, because there is no mana inside the game, so and there's no cooldown on the ability. So what I was able to do in some of these fights, I would just circle around and keep spamming fire, 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 fire. And that was basically, I mean, it was a bit tedious and slow way to win the battle, but it was very safe and almost guaranteed to basically work. Well, that strategy didn't necessarily work so well on some of the boss battles, especially the last one, because the demo is broken down to two different parts. The one is the prologue of the game, and then there's this sort of a Eikon ability showcase thing, which was showcased months ago also. And in that one, maybe during the fight with the Garuda, the spamming strategy didn't seem to be super effective, but if I had had a bit more experience with the control scheme and everything, I would say that it's still a very effective strategy, even though it's slow and tedious. So that's why one of my points of criticism about the battle. I like the parrying mechanisms and dodging mechanisms. These are very nice. But it's really, this game I think has two strong points. One is, well, the story, which we can't really rate right now because we don't have the whole picture, obviously. So we only have an expectation what the story is going to be like and the execution of it. And then there's the combat. So there are a lot of I think most JRPG players can agree with me that there are a lot of these JRPG games that have absolutely horrid combat systems, but because the story is so good, you're willing to put up with it. And then there's vice versa. You have games which have awful stories, let's say Tales of Zestria, but the combat is actually really, really nice on that game. And Tales of Arise, kind of also fits into that category. So if you have a good combat system, you can look past a bad story. Now, this is kind of what I'm getting at, is that the game is actually going to be long. I think they said literally 50 hours long of a game in total. I don't remember if that included all the side missions and everything. But when you are playing the game on a one character only, in Final Fantasy VII Remake, for example, you can swap around Cloud, Tifa, Barret. All of these characters have different types of mechanisms and a bit of a difference in nuance how the characters play out in terms of their combos and like, are they supporting characters, are they casters, are they melee and stuff like that. There's a variety there. So the question I have for the game, which I cannot answer right now, or the point of a criticism is that, is it going to be fun to play this game as Clive for 50 hours long? Because the skill progression system didn't also seem very interesting to me and everything. So, and I will address that in a second as well. And another thing I really liked about the demo was the OST. More I've been listening to it, more it seems higher quality, up to the bar with some of the greatest soundtracks. It's not maybe as iconic, but these orchestral tracks are at least on the level that they were in 15, and I thought 15 had a pretty good soundtrack, and you know, 13 also had a couple of really good tracks as well that I enjoyed. So I think I have no problems about the combat and the sound here, and obviously the voice actors are doing a pretty good job as well. Some people could argue that, well, maybe we're kind of a bit tired of these Anglo voice actors, not everything in Europe are actually sounding like British, and even though it's very European focused, like around story, obviously, like aesthetically, they are mimicking very European style castles and knights and stuff like that. But that's another discussion all on itself. Now, I'm not the Night Sky simp. I'm actually gonna keep it, you know, real for you and tell you things I like and things I don't like about this game, even though the fanboys are gonna be really angry at me. So there are a lot of things I told you: the graphics, the sounds, the combat, all of those were really good. But there are some problems with this game, and this is might be basing on what I've been seeing so far and what we know so far. So the world zones, they aren't actually half bad. They're pretty good. I don't like the idea that there's not like any type of a small mini-map to show kind of like, I've been in this location, I've already been in this room and stuff like that. I kind of would appreciate something like that in the game, and there's not anything like that in this one, but it's a minor thing. And I also kind of wish we would go back into having like small puzzles or a bit of an effort to actually like find treasures. And the treasures are just sitting there. There's a room, you open the door and the treasure just is there. And there doesn't seem to be like any form of effort of actually unlocking that chest. And that's not very RPG to me if everything is just standing there and you just need to walk there and claim it. I think there need to be a bit more effort of actually like opening up treasure chests or finding like a key or something which drops from an enemy. It can be many things. I just don't like this. This is like very, very simplified, and there's not any of a challenge or any smart hidden doors or mechanisms how to unlock XYZ. The other thing is, I'm not super into on the character cast except Torgal. I mean, dogs are amazing. Everybody likes, you know, dogs, and who doesn't? But the characters, and this is something of a complaint that I had for 15 as well. As more time has gone by, I think Square Enix are just making their characters a lot more blender and more on the safe side. They are making them very normal, and this is getting, the IP is getting towards to be very closely to feel like any like Western RPG. Like it doesn't almost feel like Japanese at all, and I understand that they're trying to pander now to the Western audience, like they see the market there because Japanese birth rates are low and people are not buying games and whatever, you know, nonsense that they're spitting out these days. But that doesn't mean that we don't love like these very flamboyant, extreme, experimental designs. I mean, I absolutely love the visual approach of Final Fantasy X, 9, 8, and 7. The character designs are iconic, but the characters that I see in here, I could say that these could be from another game. I don't see that they, aside from the hairstyles, they don't seem extremely Final Fantasy to me. And that's something most people won't necessarily care about this, but I do. I do think it's a very important to have a certain type of brand that is crossing over through generations. And I feel like that they're going too much of these bland and safe choices. Bring me back the crazy hair colors, the unrealistic hairs, and like these really weird like outfits and stuff like that. That's what I want to see. And that's not what we're seeing with this game. Now it's kind of more rooted into realism and kind of more adult type of thing. It's trying to mimic Game of Thrones in a lot of ways, and that can be taken as a good or worse. And obviously there are like, I feel like a lot of it's writing too much on the fact that people are gonna be fanboying these cool Anglo accents, basically. Like, Jill as a character felt to me extremely dull and uninteresting from her lore point of view. Maybe she gets brought in up a bit more. Like, people are always saying, this is the best girl. Like, it doesn't seem very interesting woman to me, to be honest. And, yeah. So there's that. Now, another fact that I was really worried about this game, which we already discussed a bit earlier in this video, which is there are no minigames. Now, there was some guy last time on the chat, well, actually, you know, the Eikon battles are going to be considered minigames. Shut the fuck up, man. Shut the fuck up. Those are not fucking minigames. They are fucking battles, and you get to play one of them. You get to be playing as the Phoenix versus Ifrit, and it was mostly like just spamming fire all the time. It was not very, like, fun experience. It just was button smashing. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. And well, some of the Eikon battles are gonna be different from each other. That is granted, and that has been told by us that every one of them are gonna be different experience. But that is still not like very different from the actual gameplay experience that you are going to be having on the normal battles. And what I mean by that is in 15, when you were tired of the combat, you could go on the chocobo racing things, you could go fishing, you could play that very weird game as we know as the Justice Monsters. I still don't know what the fuck that is supposed to be, some type of weird pinball game. And then there was the Colosseum monster battles. There doesn't seem to be anything in 16 that is considered like different from the main game. I really wished they could have put out some weird turn-based airship battles or some card game inside the game or something that's kind of different. Like the idea that we have to treat like, oh, you know, some monster bounties, which they have been using a million times before. They used that obviously in 12 and some, well, technically in Crisis Core as well. And I'm just like not really, I'm not sure like how long is it going to be really fun to spam out the same combat for 40 hours. Will I have the patience to actually like do the completionist run for this game? And that's always been my, in my previous video, this was my biggest point of criticism, is that is there enough variety in the game? And every aspect is telling me no. So the moment you're going to be losing interest in the combat, you're going to lose interest in a lot of the game altogether. So it's really riding on the fact that people will like the combat, which I don't doubt people will, but will people be really into like playing it 60 hours and completing all the monsters and side hustles and all that type of stuff? And if they're going to be putting out DLC, are you going to be still wanting to play that DLC? Like me playing now, like almost 8 days through of Diablo, it's slowly becoming redundant as I've completed everything. But the thing is, I can always roll out a new class and it will change out the gameplay experience in some level. And that's like even a simple thing like having the ability to play as Torgal and Jill or Sid would have made a big difference in this game. And I don't really like this aspect of like there's going to be one character that you get to play and that's it. And I don't think that really was a really great idea in Stranger of Paradise, and I don't think it was here, you know, good decision as well, or even in 15. And in 15 you get to play as the other characters later on, but their gameplay experience is no different from Noct, basically. They're more limited perhaps, actually. So there has to be variety in the game, and the minigames are a way to do that, or having other characters to control is a way to do that. So it's too early to tell, but how many people are realistically going to be like really hooked into the gameplay combat of that same thing for 60 hours? Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong about that. But I'm really interested to hear what you guys think about all of this. And I really recommend everybody playing the demo. There probably were some type of doubters and etc. And, you know, so I kind of agree with here that, you know, it's going to be probably a really good entry. It's still in the title, and the story could be still amazing. I actually have a bit more hopes for the story right now. I just hope it will not go of this Game of Thrones route where you're just going to kill all the characters and that's going to be your assessment of a great story. And maybe also these demos and these trailers have given out too much of the main plot here. Who knows? It's too early to tell, but definitely I'm going to be probably streaming and, you know, making at least a review and video or two about this game. Thanks for watching. Make your comments about the demo in the comments, and I will be seeing you next time. Cheers.